Hey, everybody, and welcome to another My JavaScript Story. This week, we're talking to Brian Woodward. Brian, do you want to say hi?
Hi, how's it going? Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Now, I think we had you on quite a while ago on JavaScript Jabber. It was episode 98, and we're now past episode 350.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, that episode came out in 2014, so been a while.
Yeah, I think that was talking about mostly Assemble at that time.
Yep. Yeah, we were talking about assemble.io, and yeah, we had you and John Schlinkert, who I actually talked to last week, on, and yeah, talked about all kinds of stuff. I think we were also talking a little bit about, just the whole process of building up around that and some of the infrastructure and funding and things like that there. This episode is sponsored by Sentry.io. Recently, I came across a great tool for tracking and monitoring problems in my apps. Then I asked them if they wanted to sponsor the show and allow me to share my experience with you. Sentry provides a terrific interface for keeping track of what's going on with my app. It also tracks releases so I can tell if what I deployed makes things better or worse. They give full stack traces and as much information as possible about the situation when the error occurred to help you track down the errors. Plus, one thing I love, you can customize the context provided by Sentry. So, if you're looking for specific information about the request, you can provide it. It automatically scrubs passwords and secure information, and you can customize the scrubbing as well. Finally, it has a user feedback system built in that you can use to get information from your users. Oh, and I also love that they support open source to the point where they actually open sourced Sentry if you want to self-host it. Use the code devchat at Sentry.io to get 2 months free on Sentry's small plan. That's code devchat at Sentry.io.
Oh, yeah, with Assemble, and then also John and I have a company called Sellside.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we're still building and working on, and a lot of the tools, especially Assemble, that we build are all related to us building the Sellside platform, and when we launch, how we'll be catering to developers and providing them with tools to be able to build on top of Sellside.
Very cool. Well, this show is more focused on your story, and so we'll probably get into some of these things with Sellside and Assemble and some of the other stuff that you're doing. But yeah, we tend to start a little bit more toward the beginning of your programming career or life. Some people get started with programming pretty early. How did you get into programming?
I probably have to go back to when I was maybe 7 or 8, and my dad brought home a computer from work, and I would just being a nerd, really all that was on there was Lotus 1-2-3. So
wow.
I was I'd play around with that and just put formulas in and see what was going on. And then I also had a program on there that was, I think it could have been called Typing Wizard. I'm not really sure, but it was a game, and your character was a wizard that would shoot letters that were coming at you, and it basically taught me how to type. So that got me interested in computers in general. And my freshman year in high school, I found out that we had a programming class, and I took that, which was mostly, I think, Turbo Basic or something like that, True Basic, and some Pascal programming. And from there, my senior year in high school, I had another class, and that was actually True Basic on an Apple LC2s. So they were pretty old and basic.
Oh, wow.
And I would program small games like the Snake style game. And that got me interested even more in programming and computer science. Right. And I switched my potential major that I wanted to do for college from architecture to computer science.
Yeah, it's funny how that works, right? I mean, I wanted to be a doctor all my life, and then I took some electronics classes in high school, and yeah, I wound up being an electrical engineering major. So it's just funny how that all goes. So you got into programming as a younger person, and you kind of came up through the ranks. I'm assuming you got a computer science degree then, kind of implied that.
Yes, I ended up going to college and got a computer science degree, um, and then started working shortly after college, just in programming in a lot of different fields, or a lot of different fields. And I had mostly worked with Microsoft technologies, C Sharp, and SQL Server, and for companies like banks, insurance companies, did some contracting, and at the time, JavaScript wasn't really used as much for building the single page apps the same way that it is now.
Right.
However, I had done some JavaScript in college for basically working with a friend of mine. He built some movable type websites,
right.
And so he would get me to do some things like modifying like how drop downs worked and everything like that, just with some basic JavaScript. And then I think when I got into my Microsoft career, it did mostly ASP.NET, and then eventually ASP MVC pages. And we started using some tools like Knockout for some of managing our data on the front end,
right.
And got into some Angular and to do some single page app style sites, but they're all pretty much internal company sites.
Right.
And,
yeah, it's funny how many folks that I've talked to just out there in the wider JavaScript community are working for things that are only seen internally at companies.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, because now I think with being able to rapidly deploy a lot of these sites and like just create them and deploy them, it's easy to create a small app that you're going to use inside your company and not have to worry about creating it for an entire, public website for stuff.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting too. I mean, getting into JavaScript, it wasn't widely used. You wind up working with a friend that used it. It's I don't know. I mean, a lot of people, they get into the web world and it was, JavaScript was this thing that I kind of had to deal with, and then eventually, they kind of grow into it. And it sounds like that's not too far off from where you came into it.
Yeah, I basically grew into it just doing some front end stuff. And then when John and I started working together, we as probably went over that story when we talked about Assemble, and the reason that we built Assemble was because I was doing everything in Visual Studio, and we initially started building things in C Sharp and ASP.NET, and he was doing design work, and he would give me his HTML and CSS and try to get me to put those into front end or use them, and I'd always screw something up. So we created Assemble to make it easier for him to run and prototype and create the templates using the same data that would be used, and then that way I could write the code that would also produce that data and then apply it to the templates to generate our sites.
Right.
And that's when I got into working with Node.js and JavaScript on the server side, like more heavily, and really became good at JavaScript. And I think I can't remember the last time I've done a C# site or ASP.NET or anything like that. It's pretty much all JavaScript with static sites or some front end, like single page app type sites.
Right. So I guess what I'm curious about is, you did C# for a long time. You probably learned, maybe a couple of other languages throughout the course of your career and your education. So why settle on JavaScript? What was it with JavaScript and Node.js as opposed to C# or some of the other things that are out there that you may have tried?
I think the biggest thing is that, and I think that NPM and GitHub have helped this a lot, is that when we started working with JavaScript and Node specifically, was that we were able to find libraries that complemented JavaScript and be able to find open source projects that were able to be used in the products that we were building. And we were also able to create open source projects and allow other people to use them and get feedback and help on them that way without having to keep everything internal, just as so it's not a black box. And just the way that the ecosystem was growing at the time when we started working with JavaScript, I think it really helped us decide that we were going to stick with JavaScript and do pretty much everything full stack JavaScript at the time. Sorry, I have a dog in the background.
No, it's all good. So I guess the other question I have is related to that. You mentioned that you went through Knockout and then Angular. Is that kind of the stack that you settled on now, is sort of a Node and Angular stack, or are you on to some other technology now?
Right now, we actually are using Node on the back end, and then we've used mostly React for a lot of things on the front end. Either that or just static HTML and just some JavaScript and maybe jQuery if it's needed, but not as much front end JavaScript.
That makes sense to me. So what are you working on now?
So a couple of things are cleaning up and re-releasing some of the projects that we had been working on. One of them that was recently released, of version 2.0, was Enquire, which is a tool for building CLI apps.
Right.
And that's one that is a basis for any kind of CLI tools that we want to build. And some of those other tools that go along with Assemble, we have a tool called Generate, which is, you could call it a project generator or just a file generator, or it basically allows you to create a project, and then you would take that project and you could potentially create an Assemble project and then use Assemble to build your project. And then we have another tool called Update, which allows you to update projects, and it's basically for project maintaining. And it's helped us because we have, I think, roughly 1,400 NPM modules that we've published.
Oh, wow.
And being able to maintain those and make sure that license files are up to date, and if any new conventions or standards come up, we can easily go through our projects when we touch them and bring them up to date with how we're working. And the last one that pretty much makes up like our toolkit is called Verb, and that's for generating README documentation. So all of them, those 4 tools are all based around the same type of thing, that they're CLI apps that can use data and templates to scaffold out and generate other tools to be able to help you rapidly maintain and build sites and documentation.
Cool. Very cool. One other question that I like to ask, and this is something I always get an interesting answer to this, is was there a turning point or something you struggled with, coming into JavaScript or programming in general, or wherever it is you are now, that you can talk through with us, It's just everybody kind of struggles in a different place, but at the same time, a lot of us struggle with the same kinds of things. And so I'm curious, is there something that comes to mind when we talk about a turning point or a struggle for you?
I think that when I started programming, as I mentioned in high school, I was looking at it as a way because it was a way that I could create games. I was really into games, and I wanted to learn more about programming to be able to create games. And as it turns out, after going through college and most of my jobs that I'd work at, I was building business apps or doing something with finance, and I kind of got away from doing the games and everything. And I think the struggle at that time was I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my career or what I really wanted to do with programming and keep going. So at that point, I decided to go back to school to get a business degree and to learn more about business and different aspects of that. And when I was going through school was around the same time that I met John, and I was working as a consultant at another startup that he had started, and the getting my business degree, learning about business, and working with him and learning even more about business, I think was the main turning point for me in my career when I decided to then later start a company with John, and having the knowledge of the business background now has really helped. And I think it's helped my programming also because I can look at challenges in different ways now to see how this is actually going to impact anything that we're doing for our business, and being able to apply that through code.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit like some of the advice that I've heard out there where people essentially say every programmer should go freelance for a year because it'd make them a better programmer. And it's the same kind of thing, right? You struggle through that kind of, what is a business? What does it need? How does it work?
Yeah, exactly. Starting businesses is it's an interesting process, and there's a lot more to be done than you would think. But sometimes it's also, you just have to do it and see how it turns out,
Very cool. Well, I did have a conversation with John last week, like I said, about open source sustainability, maintainability. And I'm curious, is that something that you folks at Sellside are working on? I mean, some of the things that you talked about, like the upgrade and the README tools, are in line with that. Is that a major focus for you guys?
Yeah. So when we started out, we open sourced our projects, and we thought, maybe some people were going to get some use out of these. And it has grown a lot more. And what we found is that being able to sustain the growth, to be able to keep maintaining these projects, we needed even more tools to help maintain it. And I think it's a big topic right now is the open source sustainability. There's been a couple companies that have been creating ways to be able to try to get open source maintainers funding so that they can continue maintaining their projects. And there's a lot of companies that rely on open source projects, so they rely on these maintainers also to be able to fix bugs and everything. So we've been talking with a couple of the companies and seeing how we can participate in that and try to help out with being able to fund some of our projects through that, but then also coming up with programs on how to help other maintainers fund their programs or fund their projects, and just evaluating how that's going to work, and then building tools around those to be able to help developers continue maintaining their projects.
Nice. And yeah, we did have a conversation. Hopefully it comes to fruition here within the next few months about starting a podcast about that. So
yeah, John was telling me about that, and I'm really excited to hear that and to see how that turns out. So
Yeah, well, I think it's an important part of the community, and you see people talk about it some at some of the conferences, especially some of the ones focused around open source. But at the same time, it just, I don't know, the conversation moves slowly because it either happens across various projects. We should just do a podcast on this because I could go on forever. But various projects on GitHub or in some forum here or there or on an email thread, but there's no cohesive place where some of this conversation happens. And so I think a podcast about it would be really beneficial.
yeah, definitely being able to have all the conversations recorded somewhere.
Yep. Very cool. Well, is there anything else that you want to highlight or bring up that you're doing or think is important for people to know about before we do picks?
I think the only thing is that to go along with some of the maintainability aspects of open source is something that we haven't specifically built tools around, but I like some of the tools that are out there, and that's testing code. And especially with unit testing, we've been using Jest a lot, which is a tool from out of Facebook, and I think it's been around for a few years. And another one that I just found out about is called Cypress, cypress.io. They do front-end integration testing, and that's something I'm exploring more and really enjoying using, because I've used tools in the past that don't seem as complete.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. Cypress is very nice. And they're definitely, I'd love to see better tools come out for a lot of that stuff. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks. Do you have some things you want to shout out about on the show?
Well, Cypress was one of them. And then another thing is just to kind of shout out that on John's repository, we have a couple of maintainer guides that are created for open source maintaining and also for contributing to open source projects. I can put links in. Yeah, one is called the Maintainer's Guide to Staying Positive, and the other is Idiomatic Contributing. So those two guides I think are great for open source.
Nice. Well, I'm going to get on and I'm going to pick some stuff that's not technical, but is kind of fun. So recently I've been playing with Instagram. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, I'm Charles Max Wood on Instagram. It's all one, or it's all run together.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of just posting everything, so it's going to be a hodgepodge, right? So if you look on there right now, I think there are a couple of pictures of what I'm doing today, and a picture from a daddy-daughter dance that I went to with my 10-year-old on Saturday. And I'm going to try and be posting more photographs of things that that I'm working on here while I'm going through my day. But yeah, I'm really digging that, and so I'm going to pick that. And then I don't know. I think that's it for right now. So
yeah, Instagram, that's something that I need to get into more, is posting photos. I don't really do too much of the.
I feel like I'm late to the party, but that's the way it goes sometimes. If people want to find you online, where do they find you?
On GitHub and Twitter, my username is Doob. That's DOOWB. It's also on NPM. And I do have a blog, doob.com, and I'm trying to get started with that a little more and to write a little more, but mostly technical type things. So.
Nice. One resource I have for that, I guess I'll throw out another pick. If you're getting into blogging, Darren Rouse from ProBlogger.com. Mm-hmm. He has a terrific course. It's 31 Days to Build a Better Blog, and he walks you through all the different things you should be doing, a bunch of different ways to post, all kinds of stuff. It's really terrific. So I would recommend that.
Great. I'll have to check that out. Oh, hey, another thing that I'd like to pick is it's called Toastmasters, and this is a organization that helps people with their speaking, like public speaking and leadership skills. It's something I started going to meetings about a year ago now. I think it's helped me understand how to create speeches, but also to create documentation and to create just put together ideas to be able to explain to people what I really want to get across.
Yeah, I will second that pick. I went to Toastmasters for a few years, and then I signed up for some coaching that was at the same time that my club met. And so I haven't been for about a year. I need to find another club to go to, because it was really, really beneficial to me. And it was also great because there were just terrific people there that were all friendly and willing to help with all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've met a lot of great new friends so far.
Yep. But yeah, Toastmasters is definitely worth checking out. And you can find a club near you, I think, at toastmasters.org, I think is there.
Yes, correct. You should be able to go in there and search.
Yep. Very cool. All right. Well, thanks for coming, Brian.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, well, we'll wrap this one up, folks, and we will be back next week. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com to learn more.